When we pick up a history book, we kind of have certain expectations, right? We're looking for dates, big events, key political figures, economic forces, all that stuff. But the historical books of the Bible, from Joshua all the way to Esther, they play by a completely different set of rules. Today, we're going to explore this radically different way of telling a story. It's one where history isn't just about what people did, but about what God was doing through them. Okay, so let's dive in by thinking about our own perspective first. When you read about, I don't know, the Roman Empire or World War II, what are you looking for? You're probably focused on human actions, right? Political motivations, economic pressures, and that's totally normal. That's the standard lens we're all trained to use. And this slide, wow, it just lays out the stark contrast. Our modern way of looking at history asks, what did people do? But for the ancient Hebrew writers, the fundamental question was totally different. It was, what was God doing? And this isn't just a different focus, you guys. It's a completely different reason for telling the story in the first place. To really get what these books are doing, we have to make one crucial mindset shift. And I mean, this is the key that unlocks this entire narrative style. It's a central idea of our whole explainer today. We have to completely reimagine who the story is actually about. So here it is. This is the key takeaway. God isn't just some influence or a background theme. In these stories, God is the main character, the protagonist. Every battle, every leader, every law, it's included because it reveals something about the story's true hero, God himself acting in real time and real space. I love this quote. It just captures the idea so perfectly. See, for these writers, you don't find God by escaping the mess of history. Nope. History is the canvas. It's the very material God uses to create this masterpiece of salvation. You don't find him by getting away from the world. You find him right in the middle of it all. And what this means is that for the biblical authors, there's just no such thing as secular history. It doesn't exist. None of it. Everything that happened, from a huge battle to a small personal decision, was happening in a world that was completely saturated with God's presence. He's the silent character in every scene, the reason the story's even being told at all. Okay, so let's see how this actually works. Let's make it real with our first case study, the Book of Joshua. This is where that grand divine story gets its hands dirty and really takes root in the physical world. The story of salvation in Joshua isn't some abstract philosophy. No, it's about a specific piece of land, Canaan, which was really just an ordinary land bridge between great empires. It's about real named people, the tribes of Israel, who had just spent over 400 years as landless slaves in Egypt. For a dispossessed, kind of ragtag group of people, getting a physical home was, well, it was everything. So the book gives us a very clear, structured mission for Joshua. Step 1, take the land. Step 2, distribute it fairly among all the people. And step 3, seal the deal with a covenant, binding the people to the God who gave them this incredible gift. It's a really clear, orderly plan for building a nation from the ground up. Okay, now, we have to tackle the elephant in the room. The part of Joshua that is deeply, deeply troubling for any modern reader, the command to kill everyone in the conquered cities. This idea of holy war or the holy curse is a major barrier for a lot of people. So, to understand the narrative's logic, and this is important, we have to look at how the text itself frames it. It describes the Canaanite culture of that time, back in the 13th century BC, as a snake pit filled with practices like child sacrifice. The holy curse, therefore, is presented not as random cruelty, but as a divine judgment against a culture that, in the text's view, exploited its most vulnerable members, babies and virgins, for personal gain. Now for our second case study, the Book of Judges, which throws us into a world that is the absolute opposite of what we just saw in Joshua. Here, everything just falls apart. This one line, and it gets repeated in the book, is the perfect summary of the entire era. It just paints this picture of total moral and political anarchy. Without a central leader, society just descends into chaos, and everyone just does whatever they feel like doing, with totally disastrous results. And here's the brilliant narrative tension. Even as the human story on the ground is one of absolute chaos, the authors keep reminding us that, actually, there was a king in Israel, God. So while the lack of an earthly king explains the anarchy, the presence of the divine king means the kingdom itself is never really in doubt. It's a fantastic little twist. So who does God use to bring about salvation in all this mess? Spoiler alert, not noble heroes. The book is just filled with sex, violence, and morally ambiguous leaders. I mean, these are not role models, not even close. They are deeply flawed, often brutal people who are part of the problem just as much as they are the solution.
So the message here is really surprising. The story seems to be saying that God will work with whoever is available, just as they are. He doesn't wait for people to become perfect or get their act together. He meets them right in whatever moral or spiritual condition he finds them.
So let's step back for a moment and ask why any of this matters today. How can this ancient, God-centered way of reading history offer us a fresh perspective on our own lives? Well, this side-by-side comparison shows the powerful scope of this whole idea. In Joshua, the protagonist, God, works through order and structure. But in Judges, that very same protagonist works through chaos and failure. The narrative's lesson is that God is present and active in both extremes, whether things are going great or falling apart completely. Ultimately, what this ancient perspective offers us is a challenge. It's an invitation, really. It invites us to look beyond the surface-level explanations of politics and economics in our world and in our own lives and ask a deeper question. What might the true protagonist be doing here? And that leaves us with a final thought. This entire way of seeing history forces us to turn that lens back on ourselves. It asks us to consider our own lives not just as a series of random events, but as a narrative. And it poses the ultimate question. If your life is a story, who is the author?